What's good? It's Woog. Taylor Swift just dropped Midnights. This was her follow-up to Evermore, which was the follow-up to Folklore. So Taylor Swift, legendary career, just dropped her new album. This one, by the way, is produced by Jack Antonoff. He just won Grammy for Producer of the Year. He was nominated a few times. He's the one who produced Norman effing Rockwell. He's the producer who goes by the artist name Bleachers. He produced Lord's Melodrama album. That was nominated for Album of the Year. He's from the band Fun and produced in that band and on that band's Some Nights album, including the song We Are Young. He produced on some of Taylor Swift's 1989 album. Jack Antonoff has done a lot. And so Taylor Swift, after working with Aaron Dessner from the band The National for her last two albums, so Folklore, which won Album of the Year Grammy that year, and then the follow-up to that, Evermore, basically Taylor Swift's two kind of folky albums, or dream pop-ish indie folk style albums, relatively. She went from working with Jack Antonoff, who produced Like Lover, which was Taylor Swift's album before Folklore. So for Folklore and Evermore, she switched to working mostly with Aaron Dessner. Now, Jack Antonoff produced a couple tracks on each of those albums, but it was mostly Aaron Dessner. So now for Midnights, after working with Aaron Dessner for those last two albums, Taylor Swift is working once again with the super producer Jack Antonoff for Midnights. He produces all of the tracks except for like maybe two, and one of those tracks is produced by Joe Alwyn, who is going by the production name William Bowery. That's actually Taylor Swift's boyfriend, who's getting basically a co-writing credit. So he's not producing, but he's getting a co-writing credit on one of the songs towards the end of the album Midnights. So I expect big things out of this album, like I do most Taylor Swift's albums. Like, she has had one of the most remarkable album-by-album track records. She's a 3-time Grammy Album of the Year winner. I think she first won with Fearless, and then she won it with, I want to say, 1989. And again, most recently, she won it with Folklore. She's been nominated another couple of times. She got nominated with The Red album, and then she got nominated with her latest album, Evermore. So this is all good and well, and I think that, you know, Midnights, although it dropped October 21st, so it's outside of the consideration to be eligible for this coming Grammys, I expect Midnight to be considered and probably nominated for Album of the Year, and this is just me guessing out loud. I just think that it's going to be a good enough album where the Recording Academy shows it love after it's considered, and I think it's going to be up for Album of the Year. It's going to be one of the 10 nominees at least in the following Grammys. This is just my expectation. I've been paying attention to this stuff for a while, but all of that is good and well. What is strikingly remarkable is that Taylor Swift is managing this new album by new album trajectory. Because think about it. She dropped Folklore in 2020, Lover in 2019. In 2020, she dropped Folklore and Evermore. Evermore came out later in that same year. And then now Midnights is coming late 2022. So she's managing all of this, but at the same time, in almost like a parallel career universe, she is re-recording her previous studio albums. Basically everything that she had recorded when she was on Big Machine Records. That was the label, her longtime label, from her debut album all the way up to, I believe, Reputation. Her label sold the rights and the ownership of her albums, her discography up to that point, basically, to her former agent, who she's had a very adversarial relationship with, Scooter Braun, you know, the manager and agent of Justin Bieber. Scooter Braun bought Taylor Swift's discography from the record label, which, you know, Taylor Swift, it became a big dramatic, you know, kind of almost a scandal where Taylor Swift was just super displeased on social media, talking about how much of a betrayal this was from her label, how taken advantage of she feels as an artist, that her art and her discography, her catalog, just got, you know, sold without her knowledge, and then obviously it being bought by Scooter Braun, somebody who's certainly not her friend, probably closer to an enemy. So she was just, you know, in pieces about this, and, you know, she launched a big campaign due to her outrage from this situation. So what did she do? She basically took it upon herself to go back to the studio and re-record, essentially reclaim through the re-recording of her discography. So at this point, I think she's like 2 albums in. I think she did it for Fearless already, which was a Grammy Award winner for Album of the Year. And then she has already done Red. So she's calling these Taylor's versions. So instead of just Red, which again, that was the big machine one that went over to Scooter Braun, the original recording when, you know, when she was basically a teenager and then growing up into her early and mid 20s, right? Basically when she was at the age when she originally recorded these are basically all current Taylor, like 30 to 32-year-old. I think she's 32 years old right now, re-recording, again, Fearless, she re-recorded that in 2021, and Red, she recorded in 2021. And by the way, Red, I believe she put up for consideration for this coming Grammys. So you might get Red, Taylor's version, nominated or even winning Album of the Year, even though the original version of that album came back in like 2012. So this is a very audacious thing that she's doing. Like, she is recording new music, new albums, making new songs, and she's going back to revisit and trying to do her best to recapture the essence of her catalog. That is not an easy task. There's so many different things that go into why certain albums sound a certain way, and to try to replicate that verbatim, that's an arduous task. So you could hear different subtle differences between the original versions and these new Taylor versions. But just the fact that she is launching this album by album re-recording, which we'll see if she does like all of the albums. I tend to think she's gonna do like some. I don't know if she's gonna go back and do her self-titled debut from 2006. And you know, she just did Red. Well, between Fearless and Red, she had another album called Speak Now. So I don't know if she's just skipping Speak Now or if she's gonna go back and return to Speak Now and then re-record that one. But yeah, this is one of the boldest moves I've seen from an artist in a while, and this just speaks to Taylor Swift's overall work ethic. And again, I have no doubt that, you know, Midnights, which is kind of a concept album, right? This is an album that's, you know, based in like self-loathing and basically sleepless nights, and it's supposed to piece together in a concept album sort of way. I have no doubt that this album is probably going to match, you know, her standards set by previous albums. Now, you know, a couple of her albums didn't get as much love. Like, I don't think Reputation got as much love as some of her previous works, but you know, by and large, whether you're talking Red, whether you're talking her earlier stuff like Fearless or Speak Now, you know, Lover had some moments that had some like big hits. It wasn't, I don't think it was nominated for Grammy Album of the Year, but you know, after Lover, she won the Grammy with her second to most recent album in Folklore, and then was nominated again for Evermore. So yes, she is almost guaranteed, or at least highly likely, to be nominated for Album of the Year with just about anything that she drops, if it's high profile, and if she submits the album. Like, for instance, Drake, he doesn't submit any of his music for Grammy consideration. That's just been a long stance that Drake has done to essentially boycott the Grammys. No, Taylor Swift, you know, pretty much submits everything that's submittable. So she's basically had this album by album standard of being, you know, at least Grammy considered, you know, not to mention she's had a lot of like #1 hits. So basically every album that she's dropped, besides her self-titled debut in 2006, the Taylor Swift album, everything else has hit #1, including those 2 re-recordings of Fearless and Red. So even those re-recordings were #1 albums when they dropped in 2021. So yeah, one hell of a career to this point. She's showing no signs of slowing down. And again, I just think that it's incredible that she's doing this new music plus re-recording the old music so she could reclaim the, you know, the discography, the catalog that was essentially sold from her label to her former agent. But yeah, let me know what you think overall of Taylor Swift's discography. Have you heard this Midnights album yet? And what did you think about it? Is it as good as the 2 albums that she just did with Aaron Dessner, Folklore and Evermore, which Evermore is kind of like a side B to, or a continuation to Folklore? Let me know what you think in the comments. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you love music like I do. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.